Hello, friends. I, Ankita Datta, project lead for the Mask series at www.tellmeyourstory.biz, welcome you to the 10th episode of The Mask Factor. I'm privileged to have with us author Neil D Silva this evening, and we are going to discuss a word, an era, a story, and the significance of them all. Tell Me Your Story calls for submissions of short stories and poems on mask. Also, registrations are open for the writing program season 2 with the story prompt of Women's Silence, which is yet another form of mask. Let me begin by introducing Neil. Neil De Silva is a widely published author of over 15 books with names such as Penguin Random House, Rupa, and Hachette India among his list of publishers. His books, Maya's New Husband, Yakshini, The Spirits Talk to Me, and Haunted, among others, regularly feature on the top Amazon India lists and have attained the status of bestsellers. He holds screen adaptation deals on 4 of his books. With his experience as an author, editor, and screenwriter, Neil mentors aspiring authors. He has given a TED Talk on the art of writing a bestseller and has been invited by institutions such as IIT Kanpur, Bombay Scottish School, Lilavati Poddar School, NM College, and many others to conduct writing workshops and talk on his experiences. He is a prominent panel speaker at literary festivals around the country. He has been invited to speak at Times Litfest Bengaluru, Pune International Literature Festival, and Shimla International Literature Festival, among others. He is also the president of the Indian chapter of the Horror Writers Association. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much, Ankita. That was a very glowing review introduction of myself. Thanks. I'm looking forward to this talk.
It's a pleasure, sir. So, if we talk about the second most common topic on this earth, the first being weather, it is simply illustrated that the world is on her toes and humans are on the edge. So on the other side are those who are yet still being researched about incessantly. So does the situation make you perceive humans as interfering and nagging and dominating? Could this particular behavior also be a reason behind what we are facing today?
Yeah. So today we are going to talk about the human race as a whole and how things have changed over the times. So I'm a believer in the theory of evolution. We have seen how the humans have come from being cavemen, and even before that, how life itself began, to how we have reached where we have reached today, where we are. So when we see the transition of the human species, the evolution, we see that we began as animals, as creatures, as other species that walk this planet. But we had something that the others didn't have, and that was the inquisitive nature that we had. And because of this inquisitive nature, we started interfering with nature because we did not take things lying down. We wanted to know the answers to the questions like why and what and how. And if you see right from the discovery of fire, or I would say the invention of taming of fire, and then the wheel, and then agriculture itself, and then settling down into how in houses, we have always interfered with nature. We have always tried to make something different, sustainable, and suitable to us. And that is how we have survived. That is how we have come so far. And as time progressed, as science advanced, as our geographical discoveries happened, as we traversed this path of history, we have only changed the world as it is. Because that is the way we can survive. That is the way we are as a species. But even this sounds bad on the face of it, that a species is changing the world to such an extent. This sounds bad, I know that. But at the same time, we also have to realize that we are what we are. We have come to this level of sophistication, of evolution, and we have come here because of some reason. And if we have come till here, then there is a place for our survival as well. We are in the scheme. We are in the scheme, we are in the order of what this universe is. or we can talk about bring it closer of what this planet is. We haven't seen extraterrestrials yet, but we believe that they must also be advanced species and they must also be going on the way we are, maybe even higher than us or lesser than us. But this is what is happening, and we are in this survival race. We are resilient, and probably it is this resilience that has brought us till here so far. So while we are thinkers, we are also tinkerers. We are also changing nature. We are doing stuff. Yes, it will have its repercussions. Climate change is a very real thing. It is happening. For example, deforestation is happening, and then because of that, the entire global warming, the everything that has come, probably even COVID, because we are going to talk about COVID today, and probably even COVID is a reason is brought about by human interference. We don't know about that. Things are still developing on that front. But probably that is also one of the after effects of our existence on this earth. So we don't know what we are going towards, but we know one thing, that if we are in this scheme of things, then there is a place for us. And I also believe in the resilience of the human race. So even after COVID, I think we will survive. We will go get through this, and we will come to a point when we will look back at this with reflection and understand like where we went wrong, and probably we will do some course corrections. That's also going to happen.
Thank you, sir. So, if I were to describe COVID, I would personally quote, Conrad and say the horror that he says in The Heart of Darkness. So, what is unknown to us is necessarily evil. Would you, as a writer, of a different horror altogether, claim that the very word embraces meaningful variables to ultimately merge into one anti or non?
Yes. So this is a very thought-provoking question. I'll have to think of it. Yeah, but you have mentioned the horror from Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. Now, if I remember correctly, this in the story, this is uttered by the character named Kurtz. Yes, when he reaches at the end of his life, and he says this as his dying words when he looks back at his own life and sees all the evil that he has unleashed. He sees that all that he has done so far is wrong. It's causing chaos, it's commotion, and this is his eventual end. So this is a reflection, right? So this is looking back. Now, why this is so evil for him now at this point is because when he was doing those acts, when he was unleashing those acts, he was not knowing that he's doing something evil. But now, in retrospect, when he looks at the aggregate of everything that he has done, he sees that yes, that is evil, and as an accumulation of it, he sees that where he has brought his world to. I think COVID is very similar to this. There were lots of parallels. Why is COVID, at this particular level today, at this stage today? It is not just because the virus came and infected us. It is not just that. There were a lot of issues connected with it. Number one, there is the ignorance and the negligence of the people. So people did not know how important it was to stay isolated, sanitized, to even wear a simple thing like a mask. That was there was also a resistance to that, or to get the vaccines. Now worldwide we see that people are also reluctant to take the vaccines. So these things are also within that whole COVID spectrum that we are talking about. There is also the mismanagement at every level, from the government levels to the local levels to the even household level. So there is a lot of mismanagement. People don't know what to do when they get the disease, whether they should go to the doctor immediately or you stay back. Now these are things which can be taken into the category of ignorance, negligence, such categories. But if you look at it, even the law does not consider ignorance or negligence as an excuse. If you don't know a particular rule, that doesn't mean you can get away by not following it. You have to still follow it. So this is where our evil is today. If suppose, an example, somebody goes out without a mask, he comes back home and he gets infected and he spreads that infection within his family members. Now this is an arguable topic. Is this evil on his part, on that person's part, because he has got the disease home and probably it has led to disease and death in the house? Two people who would not have otherwise been infected by the disease. So it's a thought provoking thing. Is it evil? I think it is. It is because the person knew that he had to take certain precautions, but he did not. And in that way, he has committed small evil acts. Just like in Heart of Darkness, the small things that you do, you don't realize at that time that they are, what effects they may have. But when you see the whole aggregate of it, you see how bad it is. And that is where, I see the parallel between the horror and what the situation that we are facing today. Again, also talking about this, when we talk about horror, now there are many connotations of the word horror. What does horror really mean? We'll come to this in a while. But horror, for the public interpretation of it, it means ghosts, monsters, stuff like that. But I believe horror is much more real. It is what we are going through right now. The very fear, I have to step out of the house now. I have to just go down to the photocopy shop, take a photocopy and come back. That's the only work I have to do. But still I am scared to step out. I have that fear of dread, that how will I go? Even though I'll go with the mask and all that, I still have a worry. Now that is my horror, which I have right now. No ghosts are involved in this, but it is a horror that I face. My children have gone down now. I'm worried whether they'll come back, safe, what will happen. So this is all the horror that we are talking about. And books and literature have always taken from such things that have happened around us. I can give you the example of a movie known as It Follows. Now, there was this movie, It Follows, which if you see the movie, if you watch it and if you analyze it, it is a metaphor for the AIDS pandemic. It was about, when people have sex, they transmit the disease from one to the other. They transmit death from one to the other. It's that kind of thing. So that is definitely taken from AIDS, and it actually came at the cusp of the AIDS pandemic. So, that kind of thing. So we take real life things and we change it, we metaphorize it, and we bring it into our books and literature. So obviously there is a lot of parallel.
Thank you so much, sir. That was a very lovely explanation. And so the Gothic is omnipresent across cultural contexts. So, and the mask is integral to its existence, obviously. So, when a layman unmasks these horrific veils, there is a shrill shriek, I would say. So, can we interpret that as the disturbance of one's own inner conscience? Barring the true self from a fictional portrait, can it be equated with barring of the onlooker's own soul?
Okay, we are talking about Gothic fiction. We are talking about the use of masks in literature. And I believe that masks have such an important role to play in literature that they are omnipresent. Masks are everywhere. Right from our fairy tales, to those horror stories, to sci-fi, to superhero stories, masks are everywhere. And the thing is, masks. When I'm going to talk about masks today, it is not just that thing that you put on your face. I'm not talking just about that. I'm talking about mask as anything that camouflages you, as anything that hides your true intentions. So that is what a mask finally is. That was the historical meaning of mask, and now it has changed in COVID times to become a more material thing. But mask basically means something that you put on your face to hide who you really are. Masks are everywhere. Now, if you take fairy tales, there were people with evil intentions. Like I can think of Snow White and the Evil Queen. So the Evil Queen, on the face, she's good, she is kindly, but she has evil intentions. Hansel and Gretel's stepmother, Cinderella's stepmother. These are masks, right? So masks. Why do we need masks in literature? Because literature is all about intrigue. It's about not knowing you start a story by not knowing what is in the story. It's always like that. A story's whole structure is based on revelation. You have to uh, tell about what is happening, and you have to unfold it as it goes. You are stepping into someone's shoes and you are seeing how things are opening up to that person. So this is where masks come in play, right? So let us talk about a few famous masks in literature. Like I can think about the Man in the Iron Mask, yeah, because that has mask in the title. The Mask of Zorro, uh, and one famous mask in literature was Robin Hood. Now Robin Hood, okay, not a conventional mask, but if you see, Robin Hood lives in the shadows. People don't know who Robin Hood is. Robin Hood is a good guy, but he's an arguably good guy. You don't know whether Robin Hood, what he's doing is the right thing or not. So that is one kind of mask. V, from V for Vendetta and other places. So is V an evil person or a good person? You don't know. The character is so layered. So this is where the mask makes the character complex, and that is what we love in literature. And when we are talking about this, when we are talking about masks, I find that the best use of mask is done in the superhero books uh, throughout, whether it is DC, Marvel, or whatever. Masks are worn by the superheroes. The For the world, when the superhero wears the mask, he's a superhero. He has those powers and whatever, right? When he takes off the mask, he's a normal human being, and he has the same kind of flaws and weaknesses as we have. So the mask changes the entire personality of uh, the superhero. On the flip side, in the superhero books itself, you see the supervillains. The supervillains also wear a mask. And I can talk about the most famous supervillain of all time, the Joker. Now, the Joker doesn't wear a mask, but because his entire character is shrouded in intrigue and you don't know where he comes from, let us not talk about the Joker movie, but you don't know where he comes from. The Joker is a complete mystery. And this is the mystery of the Joker that makes him a masked character in literature. Now, think about it. If you take the superheroes, whether you take Bruce Wayne as Batman or Peter Parker as Spider-Man, yeah, the superheroes, we know who they are in person, in their human counterpart, not in their superhuman counterpart. We know both sides of their personality, right? So we know how they are as humans, we know how they are as superheroes as well. But on the other side, if you take the super villain, you know only their masked identity. You do not know who they are as humans. Joker, you do not know who he is as a human, and so can be true for most of the supervillains throughout the superhero legions. Yeah, you don't know, and I think that is why the supervillains, they become so much more terrifying, just because there is no clear answer to who they are as humans. And this is where the mask works so well. If suppose we had started the character of the Joker by first knowing who he was, I don't think he would have been so terrifying at all, because then he would have started with the same weaknesses, vulnerabilities, susceptibilities that we have, and then he would have equated with us. When he would have equated with us, we would not have found him so terrifying. So that is where the mask in literature is this kind of, it is such a important literary device. You started the question by asking me about Gothic literature and Gothic horror especially. So when I come to the Gothic horror movies or the books, let's talk about Haunting of Hill House, or let's talk about Hell House, or the books that are set in these Gothic mansions, the horror novels, or The Turn of the Screw, right? Now, or most of Edgar Allan Poe's work. Now, in all these books, there is again a mask. But here, it's not the humans who are wearing the mask, but it is the house itself that is wearing a mask. The mansion is wearing a mask. And because the mansion is wearing a mask, you don't know what secrets are there in the corridors, alleys, passages, rooms of that mansion. You don't know. So that is where the mask is. That is where the unknown lies. And that is why horror becomes so stupefying, because you do not know what is there. And when that mask will be revealed, you do not know what monster will come out of it. So that is where mask again comes into play, even in non-human elements of a story. Like in this case, the in The Shining, it is the Overlook Hotel, right? The entire hotel is haunted. We don't know what it is. And from the character of Jack Torrance, we are seeing how the mask is slowly slipping off. And we are seeing how the hotel Overlook is showing its devious, vicious, diabolic, maleficent side one after the other. And that is where the terror comes in, and slowly it penetrates your bones till the time you also feel the chill like Jack Torrance is feeling, and you feel that you are also plunging into that same depth of despair that he is in. And that is where the horror is. Let me end this by the best example of a mask reveal throughout in our pop culture, and that is in Star Wars. When we have Darth Vader finally revealing that he is Luke Skywalker's father. That moment was the moment of, it stopped hearts. Like, what is this? And though the mask didn't come off, but the reveal happened. And a reveal happening is tantamount to the mask coming off. So that is where, that shows us how important a mask is. Once the mask is gone, the story's entire dynamic changes, because then you know what it is and what you're facing on both sides, from the antagonist side as well as the protagonist side. I know it's a very interesting question and I can go on and on, but I think I have said the essence of it. Thanks so much.
Thank you, sir. But it was interesting to hear because the more and more we talk about all the superheroes and all, it becomes more and more interesting. So
Exactly.
So we often believe that fear makes us strong, or maybe that a fright is, refreshing amidst the mundane relief. So yet confronting a ghost is enough to give a lifelong nightmare. So despite this, why would you want to work with them, who are the most debated beings extant? I mean, is this a protest by way of emerging as the periphery's voice of recognition?
Uh, I see a kind of myth in this question, because when you ask me the question, you say, why do we work with ghosts and paranormal beings? The thing is, I have a bigger perspective of horror than that conventional kind of thought that horror is only confined with uh, to ghosts or to haunted mansions and haunted roads. I believe that horror goes much beyond that. So we horror authors, we actually do not work with ghosts and monsters. If you think about it, ghosts and monsters are our plot devices. They are our tools of the trade. They are like the surgeon's knife. That's what we use them for building our stories. What we are actually doing in our stories, all horror authors, is that we are probing the psychology of fear. That's what we are doing. We are trying to analyze this emotion known as fear. We are trying to see what it is. We are trying to see how dark can a human mind be, what kind of malevolent acts can a human mind perform, and we are also seeing on the other side what will be the effects of these acts on people who are unsuspecting, on people who do not know, on people who are weak and struggling and they are trying to cope with the situation. That's what we are trying to do. As a horror author, I do not want a ghost to tell a horror story. I do not want that. In my book Maya's New Husband, there were no ghosts. The terror was only that the husband was unknown. I mean, who he was as a person. The wife did not know it. And that is where the horror of the book lay. This is the kind of horror that I think defines horror more broadly. Of course, there were ghost stories, but when we talk about ghost stories, even I have ghosts in my stories, certain stories. But when we use ghosts, and I'm talking for the entire horror community in general, when we use ghosts, we mostly use it as a metaphor. We use a ghost as a symbol for an underlying fear. For us, a ghost is something that is larger than life, something that we don't know about, something that we don't know how to face. And a horror story is all about the struggle to face that. It's all about how our protagonist slowly overcomes that fear, because fear is, of course, an essential element here. How they deal with the fear, how they equip themselves to fight it, and how finally they actually come to a crescendo, a kind of situation where that fear will seep into their lives in a, very, in a way that they cannot take themselves out from. And there is where the horror story's climax starts. So that is what we do. We try to see how bad can fear be. We go to the extremity of it. Now I know that when I talk about all this, it sounds very morbid and hoary. Like, what is horror, then why do we read horror? Why do we need to read horror? Why do we need to read something that is just going to talk about what is extreme fear? Why do we want to frighten ourselves? This is the question a lot of people ask me. Why should we read horror? And probably this is my opportunity to give a response to that, because it ties in with your question. And that is, we must read horror. And I use the word must. I'm saying we must read horror, all of us, because we should stop living in denial. We try to, even avid readers, we try to live in the most comfortable zone. We try to live in this bubble where we think we are safe and nothing will happen to us. So that is what we do. So that is why a person will not pick up a horror book, because they say that horror is a dar lagta hai, we don't want to read it because we don't know what is in that book and it will scare us at nights. So I tell you, face that fear. Face that fear, because that fear is an artificial make believe fear. Somebody has created it. Face it. Watch a horror movie, because in real life horror will come to you. I hope not. But we cannot, like COVID has come. And that is the biggest horror. It's more horrifying than anything a horror author could write. Right? So in real life, when the horror comes, how will you face it? You have to become bolder. And I think we are serving a big purpose here. All the horror authors, filmmakers, everybody together, we are doing this as a kind of service. I'm making us sound like saints. We are doing this because we are giving you the biggest shocks. We are giving you those shocks so that you are equipped to face those shocks in future, when or even worse things. In my own personal life, you wouldn't believe it. Today I write horror like relentlessly. I've got 15 books out. But when I started out, when I was a kid, I was frightened of each and everything. If a single cockroach would enter the room, I would run away from the room. I could not face it. I could not face it. Darkness, loneliness was something I could not bear. I could not bear staying alone at home. Somebody has to be with me throughout. I was like that as a kid. And also, I would not. I would not watch horror movies and stuff like that, even up to a particular age. But then, when I slowly discovered the world of horror, and when I started reading more and more, I became braver. We really became bolder. All those fears, they just fell off. Because then I read things which were more terrifying. And of course, the real world happened. The life happened, as you say it. And then you know that you are becoming braver as time goes on. So, horror is therapeutic. You must read horror. It's not like horror will not just push you in the depths of despair all the time. It will also make you bolder. Dar ke aage jeet hai, as they say. So that is what horror is all about.
Thank you so much, sir. That was lovely, actually, to hear. Presenting horror in a positive note. So, regarding your 2019 novel, Yakshini, I have quite a lot of interpretations. Like somewhere in the course of the story, you equate women with the supernatural, by corresponding the Yakshini and Minakshi. So, have you ever pondered how the outcome would have been if Yakshini would have been a Yaksha, or if Minakshi would have been a lad? Otherwise keeping the plot same.
A very tough question, I must say. Because, as an author, you have built the story in a particular way. And now I have to think what would have happened if I had thought it in a different direction. It's like asking J.K. Rowling, what would you do if Harry Potter was a girl? I mean, it's tough. Okay, what I believe is, going to where the idea of Yakshini started in my mind. I think that Yakshini is a very, very female oriented story. It's a very woman centric story, right? From the start where it begins. Why it is woman centric is because the whole story of Yakshini, just in a nutshell, I'll just give the core idea. It is the story of this young girl, Meenakshi, growing up in this patriarchal society in Maharashtra in a small rural village, Vatgaon. And because it's a male oriented kind of society, she has difficulties from the gender point of view. The male gaze falls on her, and she is just 15, and she's growing faster than her six older sisters. And when the male gaze falls on her, at first she does not know how to come out of it, how to take care of the problem, because she realizes it's a problem right away, any girl would. But then she has a weapon, and that weapon is within her, and that is a Yakshini. She has the spirit of a Yakshini within her. And whenever the male gaze falls on her, she transforms into this Yakshini form of hers, and the Yakshini takes over and takes the revenge. And it can be a gory revenge, or I won't say revenge because it's usually defense. So whenever that happens, you know, then the Yakshini's spirit takes a step back. Meenakshi comes back. And when Meenakshi comes back and she sees the aftermath of everything that has happened, that the people have been brutalized, the man has been even killed in two cases in the story, then Meenakshi starts thinking, what will happen now? How will society, you know, what will I answer to society? Because even though this is a brutality for defense, it is a brutality, and how will society look at me? Because we know that in society throughout history, women who have had a voice have been suppressed. We even know of how the allegations of witchcraft and all have been just loosely thrown about at women all the time. So that was where Yakshini came from. So now, looking at the story how it was, if you put a man in that place, if instead of Meenakshi I had say Mahesh, and instead of Yakshini I had a Yaksha, it would not have had the same impact. Because the thing is, the the things that women are facing in society, men are really not facing that. Yes, it's happening. Male rape happens, everything happens. Male gender subjugation happens, all those things even happen to men, but not at the extent with which it is happening to women. Women, it is just like a catastrophe. We know about the Me Too movement. When Me Too movement happened, like almost practically every woman spoke out. So on social media, there was a comment from almost everybody, right? So it's not the same thing with men. Men have their privileges from time eternal. They have their privileges. Men can get away with things even today. We know that, and that hurts me. Being a man, that hurts me. That because I think I don't like discrimination in any form whatsoever. Like, we are all equal and we have to live equally. So that is the thing, and that even comes to gender. So this, I believe that it could not have been a story with a man in the role of Meenakshi and Yakshini. It would not have the same steam. Again, but I would say that, today the world is changing very fast, and gender itself, the term gender, has become so much more layered. It is no longer binary now. So it's no longer just male and female like we used to think about 30 years ago. It is very different. Now we have such a huge queer community. There are so many different definitions of gender, and because of that, probably, nuances have changed. So probably some years down the line, there could be a Yakshini story from a male perspective as well. We don't know about it. When things open up, we will know. But yes, it can happen. I'm trying to explore a story in future. I'm writing the book, the Gandharva, and in that there is a male character. And yeah, it is, you can call it as a gender mirror story to Yakshini, but it is, yeah, it's different. I cannot talk about it now, but yeah, I'm trying to do it. Yes.
Thank you so much, sir. Well, that gives us hope. Yakshini, here oscillates between the Tempestian Ariel and the Magmathian Hag. Through Yakshini and, of course, Minakshi, you have contrasted the heinous expectations and attitudes of the prevailing patriarchy, as you already said, against a major female silence and resistance and a mere, rare female dominance. So, is it a true justification? I mean, did you have such masked themes or already in the bucket list as the writer of Yakshini, as the voice again of the marginalized?
First of all, let me thank you so much because you have compared Yakshini to Shakespeare. So you have just got a parallel to Shakespearean characters like Ariel and the hags. So yeah,
Yes,
thank you very much for that. If you even saw
this
a
is supernatural parallel, actually.
yes, if you see even a tiny glimpse of that in Yakshini, then I am of course terribly flattered. Thank you so much. Oh, and now thinking about the answer for this again. So why? Let me start with this. Why did the Yakshini character fascinate me? When I wanted to, when I told you about the thought process that went behind Yakshini. So when I was writing Yakshini, why did I go for Yakshini only? I wanted to give Meenakshi the superpower to fight against patriarchy. But why did I decide that that superpower had to be a Yakshini? Now that is an interesting story. So I was doing research, and I knew about Yakshinis, right? Of course, from the beginning. I have been reading a lot of Hindu mythology right from the start, from my teenage. And Yakshinis always fascinated me. Why they fascinated me was because they are these supremely beautiful, enticing beings. They are demigods, to be more precise, and they are worshipped, they are propitiated. They are propitiated for boons, various boons. In Hindu lore, there were 36 Yakshinis who live in Kuber's abode. That is the lore. But of course, different texts give different numbers, and there were all changes there. But still, the core character of the Yakshini is always a boon giving, a benevolent kind of being. But at the same time, Yakshinis are also temperamental. They are also vain. So you do not know when that boon will become a curse. If while propitiating them something goes wrong, that boon which you are seeking from the Yakshini might as well become a terrible affliction upon you. So Yakshinis are unpredictable. You do not know what will finally come in your kitty when you are propitiating a Yakshini. The Yakshini sadhana is a very elaborate rite. Uh, I read about it, but I have not included that in my book because my book has a fictional Yakshini. So I did not want to have any of the sadhana elements into it. But that was where the whole story fascinated me. Why? Because the Yakshini, the one that you are going to propitiate, might eventually be good or bad. Unpredictability. And that is where I believe you saw the Shakespearean glimmer. The reason is because Ariel from the Tempest, Prospero. Yeah. So Ariel does mostly good things, mostly delivers Prospero and stuff like that. Whereas the hags in Macbeth, they are terrifying, right? They are scary. So they are downright horror. So here, this also brings me to the point that Shakespeare has also written horror, and these are the horror elements in Shakespeare. Shakespeare loved ghosts. So yeah, Shakespeare has also written horror. I think he's one of the world's most famous horror writers. Then in that case, but anyway, so if you see Ariel and the hags, they are totally diametrically opposite when it comes to characters, good and bad, outweighing them. And the Yakshini, is somewhere in the mean. In the story also, the Yakshini is sometimes good when she is saving Minakshi from all those men. She is brutal but good. I think a better parallel would be with goddess Durga. The goddesses from Bengali lore who come down to kill the demons. So that is Yakshini's avatar at times. But then at times the Yakshini is also vain. She is also self-centered. She is self-seeking. So it gave me such a fantastic character to work with that I could take it directly from the pinnacle of good to the annals of evil. I could just do that kind of oscillation with Yakshini. And that is why the book turned out the way it turned out. Yeah, so that is probably it. That is how it came to me. And also, when you think about Meenakshi, because Meenakshi's character also changes. The story spans from a 15 to 30 age, so it's kind of a 15-year growth of Meenakshi herself, a girl living with a Yakshini inside her. How would she be? If you see the best story of a dual character in literature, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, it's a very short time span, the stories. But Yakshini's time span was huge, like 15 years. So 15 years, what is happening to Meenakshi? Imagine a girl living with a demon, not demon, demigod within her. A demigod who can be god or beast also at times, right? So you don't know. So a girl living like that, how would that girl's entire life be? And when that girl is going to marriage, to get married to the man that she has fallen in love with, she's still scared whether the Yakshini will come out and kill that man also, thinking that that man is also one of those patriarchal men. So, she doesn't know how her life might be jeopardized by whatever she is getting into. So, there was so much of intrigue. Talking about masks, there were so many masks to reveal throughout the story that I found myself on a journey when I was writing this. A fabulous journey. I'll never forget it throughout my life. Thank you so much for asking me this question.
Thank you so much, sir, for answering it so beautifully as well. And we have an audience question, but we will take it after the formal session concludes.
I'm
So,
so happy that we are getting audience questions, because audience questions show that somewhere, a chord is being struck. Thank you so much for the audience questions. Do keep them coming.
yes, sir. So, moving on to the next question, the paranormal, the gory, and the terrible are all, beautifully crafted in the novel. So, I would like to ask you, in general, are the ideas purely fictional, or do they have a hint of non-fiction, like incidents that urged to be portrayed as a strife between the humans and the other?
The story is purely fictional. I built the entire story from scratch. Uh, when I was thinking about Yakshini, I was okay. I'll reveal this. I have said this before. It's not exactly a reveal. So the story of Yakshini was born in my mind during the Nirbhaya rape case. So we know the brutality of it, we know the horror of that story, and that's why I say that is real horror. That is more horrifying than anything a ghost or monster can do, because that was done by humans. Humans are the more horrifying creatures, and I read the case thoroughly as it was repeated in I reported in the papers, and I read about each and every detail that the men had done to that poor girl. I read the depravity of it. Like, how sick can a human mind be? Like, what is the compelling force that makes a man do that? So it shook me. And that was where that whole idea of Yakshini came in, that what if that girl could have fought back? What if she had something within her, some X factor, by which she could have fought back and probably even, done the same, unleashed the same terror on those men? If she would have done that, and if she would have even saved herself, would society have seen her in the same way afterwards? Because society would have definitely not taken her as a normal woman after that, because she has done something to the men. Would society have understood her, accepted her? That was where the whole story came in my mind. So it came from a true event, a very mind numbing true event. It stayed with me for many, many years. I was not even an author then. It was just a strong story idea that came into my mind, because my debut book was in 2015 and this case was much before that. But the idea stuck with me. It stuck with me for years, years, years. And then somewhere in 2017, after Maya's New Husband and Pishach and some of my books were out, suddenly, there were these rape cases going on in some states, and again those same brutalities were being unleashed. Of course, that rapes happen all the time in India, we know about it, but there were some reports which again were the kind of same mind numbing outputs that were coming in. And this story, which was in my mind, it started bubbling. And one morning, when I was just in that fugue state between sleep and wakefulness, that, semi conscious state, the entire story told itself to me. Like what should happen, who should be my girl, the Meenakshi or whoever, and what should be within her. Then that Yakshini element came, and then the entire story opened up to me. Then I started writing it. I started writing it within 2-3 days itself. I did not waste time. And the moment I started writing it, I'll tell you, it was the quickest story I wrote, because I am telling you, it was it because I felt like the universe was telling me that story. With I have written 15 books, but I have not had that experience with any of the others. With Yakshini, it was like, the story was telling itself to me that this is the next scene, this is the next scene, this is the character. I could see everything. And it was just like I was sitting and writing whatever was just coming into me. I was assimilating and putting it down on paper. That's how Yakshini happened. And then, of course, Rupa Publications came on board, and the Bookbakers, my literary agency, they made the book happen, and it became such a big commercial success. That is how Yakshini happened. So, yes, it did come from a point of non-fiction, the idea of it, the very core idea of it. But the book is purely fiction. Even my Yakshini is not one of the 36. I have made up the Yakshini because I did not want to actually explore the lore. I wanted to explore the psychology of the human characters that are involved in the story. But yeah, there is a lot of mythology again. So there is Kuber, there is Alkapuri, all that is there. But the story is fiction.
Thank you so much, sir. So, coming to our concluding question of the formal session, nature lets both sleep on her lap. So, a sour tree is as much a part of the supernatural as is the tree, the girl, and the spirit parts of the nature. So, as nature's elements, would you hope for a mutual realm someday, where all of the natural souls rest in peace together? Is the being with, being one with the Paramatma a similar kind of thought?
Okay. So, yeah, that's a very utopian thought. If you think about it, all the creatures living in harmony, including us, humans, because I think we are the ones who tinker with nature. No other creature interferes with nature or changes it in the way that we do. So, yeah, if humans take a step back, probably not a step back, thousands of steps back, probably that is possible. But then it will not happen because we are what we are. And I said that is also essential for the scheme of things. That's what I believe in. We are like this for a reason. And even if we are changing the nature, probably there is a reason for that as well. Otherwise, why would we have done it for thousands of years? So, probably. Yeah, but getting back to the state where all the creatures can live in harmony, where we are all nature. Now, if you look at my screen also, there is not a single natural thing behind me. Everything behind me is man-made. The technology that we are using is also human-made. So that's it. But probably when we go back to complete nature, it's utopia. That's what probably our scriptures tell us. In the Bible, there is this whole, the Genesis talks about the Garden of Eden. I mean, the Garden of Eden, everybody lives in harmony. There were all creatures, all kinds of species. There is the tree of knowledge. There is everything. Even the humans are there, and the humans have also like other creatures. So they are all living in harmony. Nobody is stepping on the toes of the other. They are all together, but they do not have knowledge. So that is the point where I always start thinking. They do not have knowledge. And if you see us on the planet Earth right now, we are the ones with knowledge, but you look at all the other species, they are the ones without knowledge. They are just surviving, they are just existing. Okay, but we are the ones who are living because we have knowledge. But this knowledge has now become for us a boon as well as a curse because it has taken us to where we are. If you take knowledge out from the equation, probably all the species will be able to coexist in harmony. If you add knowledge to it, if you add the inquisitiveness, curiosity, intrigue, and the need to stay behind a mask into the equation, then I think that all species living together, coexisting in mutual harmony is a myth. Maybe one day it will happen. Maybe that is the afterlife. Who knows? Maybe in the afterlife, in when we become ghosts or whatever you believe in it, maybe when we take the form of our atma, our knowledge is taken away. Maybe we are just specters at that point of time. And maybe that is the reason why we can coexist. Maybe that is the reason why we do not have struggles and strifes and worries and sorrows. And maybe that is the reason why we call it paradise or heaven or you know jannat or swarg or whatever the term we use. Maybe that is it. That is what it is. That is utopia.
Thank you so much, sir. So now we will take the audience question that we had. So Sharon Shri uh, uh, asks you, how do you create your story? Do you begin with characters or plot?
Thanks, Sharon, for your question. So I have different ways. It depends on the book. But what should essentially happen is that I should have that one spark, one idea. And that core idea should be so strong that it should stay with me for days and days. Now, like as an author, I keep observing things, I keep looking at people, and ideas hit me all the time. I note them down. But the thing is, when the idea stays with me for several months, that is when I think that this idea is good enough for a book. Then I take that idea and then I start thinking actively about it. And at that point, I first need the character. I am a character driven writer. Like in Yakshini, I wanted first, like, by the way, this is Yakshini in case, oh, the cover is already on screen, I can see that. So when I was writing Yakshini, when the core idea struck me, the first thing I needed was who would be my central character, who would take the story forward. So that is important to me. So for me, it is always the character first. Once I know the character and I have know the core idea, I know which is the conflict. I know what my character is going to fight for, struggle, and then I build that journey, that character arc. So once the character arc is done, then I start developing my plot around it. So it is like if you consider it is I can call it as a leaf structure. I want to build the rib first, the mid rib, which is the character journey, and then I want to build the leaf around it, which is the entire plot. That's how probably I work. But then again, it changes when the book is different. The plot creation structure might be different for me.
Thank you so much, sir. That was beautifully illustrated. So, at Mask Factor, we discussed new perspectives in each episode. Thanks a lot, Neil, sir, for speaking about themes that are unspoken, and thank you for this very insightful conversation and also for your time with us this evening. To everyone, let me put a reminder. Tell Me Your Story calls for submissions on Mask, and registrations are open for the writing program season 2 with the story prompt of The Women's Silence, which is yet another form of Mask. We hope to hear from you. And till then, let us all try to stay safe, stay well, and though distanced, let us stay together. Good night.
Thank you so much. This was an enlightening discussion. The questions really made me think, and it was exactly the way an interview should be. Thank you so much for having me here. Thanks especially to Koral Das Gupta for running this entire the TMYS campaign, because that is a wonderful thing that you are doing for literature, Koral. Thank you so much. Thank
It was
you,
our pleasure.
audience. Thank you for being with us. And as Ankita said, stay safe, stay happy, and keep reading.